Hey everyone, welcome to lesson number 14 on our persuasive writing unit, thinking about the central topic of climate change. Okay, so your title today up above is Rebuttals, and a rebuttal or rebuttal is an attempt to contradict or disprove an argument by offering a counter argument or countervailing proof. So your first step today is to get down your title and to copy the definition on the top right over here. Okay, get those down into your books or on your paper first, and our objective I will read out as you're doing that. We're going to be learning today to craft a rebuttal using argumentative phrases, facts and sarcasm. So hopefully today will be quite a fun lesson for you where you can get to be quite sarcastic. We're also going to be covering some interesting topics in today's lesson. So all of the videos that I reference you will need to find on the playlist on my channel. So I've created a Year 7 Persuasive Writing playlist, and on that playlist you will find reference to all of the videos that we look at in today's lesson. Okay, I'm just going to move myself out of the way so I can deal with your starter. There we go. Okay, so you should have at this point got your title down and you should be copying your definition. Once you have done that, pause the video until you're ready to begin with your starter. Okay, so starter time. In your opinion, how serious are the issues of climate change on a scale of 1 to 10? Imagine that 1 is down with Tony Abbott's speech that we looked at last lesson. Climate change is not that important. And number 10 is super important, Greta Thunberg, and the house is on fire. Okay, so on a scale between 1 being not at all important, 10 being very, very important, where would you personally rate the issue of climate change? Okay, how serious is it? Okay, so write yourself a scale to rate it between 1 and 10. You need to put, if you're just writing a number down, you need to say what you're rating next to it. So I would rate between 1 and 10 the seriousness of climate change to be around an 8, where 10 is most and 1 is not at all serious. Okay, you need to always explain anything you're writing down. Otherwise, when you look back at your notes, it will not make any sense. So do that task now and make sure you're making it very clear what your scale is about. I'm sure in science you're told that you need to make sure that you are labelling your axes, for example. And in other subjects, I'm sure as well, like geography, that's really important. Otherwise, how do we know what we're looking at? So make sure you've labelled it and made it super, super clear. Pause the video, then we'll do the challenge. Okay, so for the challenge, how persuasive are the counter arguments on climate change? So you're drawing on the information we've looked at last lesson. There are some videos again in the channel playlist for Year 7 Persuasive Writing that will show you and talk you through the arguments both for climate change and against climate change. You want to make sure you've watched all of those videos and that you're really up to date with the references I'm making here. Make sure you've looked at last lesson and what we've learned about counter arguments to climate change, and then I want you to draw on all of that information to answer this. How persuasive are the counter arguments on climate change and why? There is no right answer. This is about your personal opinion. Do you think that the counter arguments make sense? Do you believe them? And are they persuasive and why? Okay, get going with those tasks now, guys, and pause the video. Right, so I said we were going to have a little bit of fun with the lesson today. I cannot tell you how disappointed I am to not be having this lesson with you in the flesh. I would have been so excited to see your dynamic answers and reactions in class. You guys that I teach in my Year 7 class, big shout out to you all, I'm missing you. You know that we have really animated debates and discussions. Tom, I wish I was hearing what you were going to say about this. Amongst the others, I'm pretty sure the girls would have torn you to shreds. So, your task, create a convincing argument that the earth is flat. Okay, so using the image here. I want you to try and persuade someone. You can imagine you're trying to persuade me to change my mind that the Earth is a globe, which is definitely what I think, and try and persuade me that I'm completely wrong and that the Earth is indeed flat. Okay, you will need to write down at least 3-4 really persuasive arguments. Okay, if you can get to 5, that'd be great. If you want a challenge, see if you can do it using some of your fire actions methods. So see if you can write me a really persuasive paragraph or so for your challenge to tell me why I should believe the Earth is flat. For a lesser challenge, you want to just list some points and some arguments, for me at least 3 or 4, to try and persuade me that the Earth is flat. It doesn't matter if you don't believe this and if you don't agree with it. You're just playing with trying to create arguments that are controversial. Okay, give it a go now. Okay, so I'm really hoping you're going to send me some examples of your arguments, so that I can be persuaded or not that the Earth is flat. In the playlist, I have put links to the videos that I would have shown you here. Go check those videos out. They are about the flat earthers, people that genuinely do believe that the Earth is indeed flat. And I'd like you to watch what they've got to say, and then tell me. There's links to Holly and Philip from Morning TV talking about they're interviewing people that believe very passionately in flat Earth. And I'm not going to tell you whether I think that's right or wrong. You know what I think about the globe already. I think it's really interesting that people can put across these other arguments, and I like being challenged in what we accept to be conventional wisdom about our world. So I sort of welcome the debate about it, but I'd like you to tell me what you think about it. And the question for you as you're watching these is, are these arguments logically formed? Now, I'm not asking you, are they right and correct? I'm asking you, do you think they are logically formed? Are they well written arguments? Do they make sense? Are they persuasive? That's different to are they correct? It's, are they putting it across logically? Okay, so watch the videos, then you need to pause this video, go watch those on the playlist on my channel, Year 7 Persuasive Writing, and then answer this question. Are the arguments logically formed? Okay, try and write down more than just yes or no. I need to know why. Okay, have a go at doing that now. Okay, so you should have now watched the videos on the playlist that are about flat Earth and flat earthers' opinions on why the globe is actually a fake concept and the world is indeed flat. You should have also now written down an answer as to whether or not you found those arguments logical. I'm now going to talk to you about what a rebuttal is. It's an attempt to contradict or disprove an argument. Now, you've copied down this definition here, so you've already got this in your book, or you should have done that at the start of this lesson. I've now shown you here a list of rebuttal phrases. Your job is going to be to use some of these phrases here to write a rebuttal to the flat Earth argument. So you've already tried to persuade me that the Earth is flat. Now I want you to try and counter that argument and tell me why that theory is wrong. And to do that, I want you to use some of the phrases that are modelled for you here. And what this shows you is that you can be acknowledging of the line of argument that's been put across by the flat earthers, but you then go on with a word like however and therefore to prove why it's wrong. Okay, so for example, I might say, it is true that the flat earthers may have very convincing or logical arguments. However, they fail to justify fully the evidence that we have from satellites or from missions to space that clearly show us footage of the Earth being a globe. Okay, that would be a model of how you could do it. So you can choose any of these sentence structures. You need to follow the order of these words. So certainly it is true that the flat earthers are gaining in popularity, but in short, I am suspicious of the lack of facts they use to support their arguments. Or you might say, admittedly, the flat earth debate is gaining in publicity. On the other hand, so are many other arguments that are equally flawed and lacking in sufficient evidence to prove that they are true. Okay, you get the idea. So you're going to take whichever of those sentence starters you like best, do whatever works for you, but you're going to try and prove why the flat earth argument is wrong, and you are going to follow these sentence structures. Okay, any of you that hold the view that the earth is flat, I'm in no way discrediting your opinion. You are welcome to have that opinion. I'm just teaching you how to structure a really good rebuttal here, okay? And equally, those of you that believe the world is a globe, you're welcome to whatever view you have. The point of the lesson is to learn how to construct really good sentences that will help you to counter whatever arguments you may need to in life. So, choose a couple of these and string them together to create your argument against the flat earth debates. Have a go at doing that now. You need to spend at least 5 minutes on this. Okay, for our next activity, you are going to need to refer back to the speech we looked at last lesson, which was Tony Abbott's Daring to Doubt speech. You can download that speech from the description for video number 13. It was also used in video 12 as well. So you can go and re-watch his speech in either of those videos. And I'm going to ask you, based on his speech, to write a rebuttal. So you're going to practice coming up with the counter argument to what he is arguing. And you're going to use the stages here, stage 1, 2, and 3. So I can put myself back on the screen now, of course. Okay, so we're going to start with number 1, the blue box. Some might say that climate change is... I'd like you to try and finish that sentence based on Tony Abbott's opinion. So some might say that climate change is not solely caused by humans. You could put in brackets Tony Abbott's speech, Daring to Doubt, as your evidence there. Okay, so that's for the first blue box. Okay, so I'm helping you to get going with this, but I'm going to ask you to then finish it without giving you the answers. So once you have answered or finished the sentence for box number 1, the blue box, you're going to try box number 2, the green box there. Tony Abbott argued in his speech, Daring to Doubt, that climate change is. You need to now put in a quote. Okay, so we're going to pull the speech up in a second. I'm going to talk you through some of the quotes that you could use. You need to choose the one that you think works best for you. Okay, so I'm going to reread you an excerpt from the Daring to Doubt speech by Tony Abbott, the Australian politician. And I'm going to ask you to look for evidence that you could use to explain the view that he has on climate change. So you're looking for one quote that sums up what he thinks about climate change. Okay, so in what might be described as Ridley's paradox after the distinguished British commentator, at least so far, it's climate change policy that's doing harm. Climate change itself is probably doing good, or at least more good than harm. Okay, so that's the first bit for you to think about. What could you take from that and use as a quote that would prove what he thinks about climate change? Okay, try and find your quote now. Now I'm going to skip to the end of his article and we're going to read a little bit more. And again, I'm going to ask you to think about another quote that you could possibly use. And we're going to read from here. So, a tendency to fear catastrophe is ingrained in the human psyche. Looking at the climate record over millions of years, one day it will probably come. Whatever we do today won't stop it. And when it comes, it will have little to do with the carbon dioxide emissions of mankind. Okay, so I've now read you 2 key paragraphs from Tony Abbott's speech here, Daring to Doubt, and what he's doubting is climate change. And I'd like you to now choose a quote. You might want to look at this last paragraph here, okay, or the paragraph up here, this one, in what might be described as Ridley's paradox. And I want you to try and select a quote that best sums up what he thinks about climate change. Right, pause the video and have a go at doing that now. Okay, so you should have selected a quote. For those of you that are finding it hard, I'll give you some pointers. Some of the quotes that you might have selected might have said, climate change itself is probably doing good, or at least more good than harm. So from here, 3, yeah, that bit there, you could have used that. That would have been a really good quote to have selected. Or from the ending, you may have chosen, so I would start my quote by saying something like, on his views on Armageddon or the final days of Earth, he feels, and then quote from, it will have little to do with carbon dioxide emissions of mankind. Okay, so those are both really useful quotes for you to have chosen. Right, we're going to go back and have a look at how to structure your rebuttal, your counter arguments, what he's saying. So I shall meet you back there. Okay, so we have already answered the first point by saying some might say that climate change is not solely caused by man, as Tony Abbott argues in his speech Daring to Doubt. Now, for your second point, here, Tony Abbott argued in his speech Daring to Doubt that climate change is. That's where you need to put in your quote that you have selected from his speech. Okay, so do that now and pause the video. Okay, so having now completed your quote in there, we're going to go on to use our rebuttal word, however, to form our counter argument. So, however, what argument could you make to prove that he is wrong? Okay, so for example, let's go back to his speech. Okay, so if we have a look at what he says here, climate change itself is probably doing good, or at least more good than harm. We want to think of how we could counter that point. So a really persuasive way of countering that would be to use some evidence, some facts that prove that climate change is real, or that it is doing huge amounts of damage to the planet. So what you might want to do at this point is go back and check the notes that you made on the arguments that climate change is incredibly damaging and is real. So we've looked at that in our previous videos. You may want to now get your phone or look it up on the internet and look up, Google some climate change statistics that are actually tried, tested, that we know are accurate, and use those to help form your counter argument. Remember, you're going to begin that sentence after your quote here with however. Okay, so you want to go on to say something like, however, there is evidence that, and then go give me a fact about climate change that proves it is a real concern. Okay, so at this point you should have now finished stage 1, stage 2, and your final point here with your however and your evidence that climate change is indeed real, or is having a very real impact on our world. Okay, now that is a well-constructed counter-argument. We've made a point here. We've used evidence of that point to prove that we're not making this up, and then we formulated our argument about why it is wrong. Okay, now this is a structure that you will need to follow when you're making really convincing arguments in your persuasive writing. You'll be wanting to say, although some people argue, give their side of it. You might want to use a quote or cite a particular person's opinion, like Tony Abbott's. You would then go on to say, however, and then really argue your case. Why is that wrong? What are they missing in what they are arguing? Okay, this is how you can construct a really convincing, persuasive argument. Okay, so for any of you that were struggling to find really convincing facts or statistics, to finish your third point there, or for those of you that are interested now in gleaming some information about the facts and statistics on climate change so that you can add those to your persuasive assessment at the end, these are some key bits of info for you to take and make notes on to build your bank of facts for your writing. So we know, this information, by the way, below comes from NASA. Okay, who monitor a lot to do with our weather patterns. So we know that carbon dioxide is up 413 parts per million. We know global temperature, 19 of the 20 warmest years on record have occurred since 2001. That is an astonishing fact. We know that the Arctic ice is down minimum 12.85% per decade, and that the ice sheets are down 427 gigatons per year. Okay, so real shocking statistics there. These are great to have written down in your book, ready for when you write up your assessment. You need to copy some of this key information into your book now so that you have it to help you to write up your persuasive argument later. It's really important that we are accurate. When we're writing persuasively, if you have inaccurate statistics or facts, or they haven't come from a reliable source, then it's very easy for the opposition to disregard your argument or think that you're ill-informed. So as you can see here, the information I have taken comes from a reputable source. It comes from NASA. And who better to trust than NASA on this? You've also got some information here on climate and development, data and facts to do with water. So 80% of the wastewater worldwide remains untreated and releases extremely damaging greenhouse gases. Also, climate change will endanger basically a third of the glaciers in Asia by 2100, and will therefore impair the water supply of several million people and their agricultural activities. It's incredibly difficult reading this from far distance, which is where I'm sat away from my computer, so I apologise for that. 90% of natural disasters exacerbated by climate change are linked to water-related risks. And by 2050, 2/3 of the global population will be affected by the impact of water scarcity. Okay, so again, as I say, really shocking statistics here, but these are really useful to have in terms of formulating your arguments. Take at least 3-4 of these that you could then work into your persuasive piece when you come to write your letter to the MP. So choose your facts and statistics now. Do not forget to credit where you've got them from. So NASA is the basis for all of these, okay? And research into water aid has produced these. Okay, so you want to be able to obviously look up your own facts and statistics on this as well. When you're doing that, make sure that you are using reputable sources. It's all very well using what a newspaper might have reported, but it's always a really good idea to go to scientifically reliable websites. I will try and post for you into the playlist some sources that you can use to make sure that you are looking at the right sources to help inform your facts and statistics, okay? Right, so time to have a bit more fun with this. We're going to think about sarcasm. So sarcasm we're going to use to try and attack the opposition's viewpoint, okay? So those that possibly climate change deniers, and we're going to do that thinking about how we can do it without seeming petty. And one of the ways that you can do it without seeming too petty is to do it with intellectual use of language. So I have got for you here a sarcasm vocabulary list. Really nice one to learn and use in life in general. You want to try and copy down that key list there, and you need to make it in your exercise book under a subtitle of sarcasm vocabulary. So we've got malarkey, drivel, blather, nonsense, tripe, and balderdash. These are all words that you can use to dismiss the value of something, and they are humorous and sarcastic in tone. So if you are being sarcastic, you are making usually a personal attack upon someone by saying something slightly disingenuine. So you might say that, of course, all my arguments about climate change must be drivel or blather or malarkey in the eyes of Tony Abbott, who so clearly feels that climate change is not a key concern. Okay, so I'm modelling there for you how you can use that, and you want to use it in a what we call a self-deprecating manner. So you're almost like using it to apply it to your own argument, as if to say that this is what other people who are climate change deniers would think, that you are full of blather or nonsense or tripe. Of course, my arguments are, and then use one of these words, but you're of course using them very sarcastically, meaning you do not mean that. You mean the absolute opposite, that they are full of malarkey and drivel and blather, because they don't see the truth in what you're saying. So your task then, once you've got your list down, use the vocabulary to add a sarcastic point to your rebuttal. So we are thinking in particular about Tony Abbott because he has written a speech that we have analysed. It doesn't matter whether you agree with him or not, we're just using the skills and his speech as a basis to form our arguments, okay? So we finished our rebuttal here with however, and then you went on to make a factual point, hopefully using some of this information here, okay? And now we are going to add to that with our sarcastic comments using the vocabulary here, but you want to apply these to what Tony Abbott would say about your argument on climate change. So you might say, you've gone on to say, however, NASA's data clearly proves that climate change is very real and tangible and is having a physical effect on our world. And then you would say, of course, Tony Abbott would consider this point of view and that of NASA to be tripe or balderdash. Now, you don't really mean that, but you are forming a sarcastic comment in order to make the audience side with you and find your side of the argument humorous and well informed. Okay, have a go at doing that task now, guys, and pause the video. Okay, so having written your sarcastic finishing point to your rebuttal comment, I'm now going to kind of shift direction slightly, and we're going to think about pathos again. So the way that sarcasm works best is if you can follow a slightly humorous point with a really serious point. And of course, that kind of serious point is something emotional about the impact of climate change. And this is the technique of creating pathos. So building up like an emotional reaction in your audience of sympathy or disapproval over climate change or guilt. You want to try and tap some emotion. I'm not going to play you the video on here for legal reasons, but I have dropped a link in to the playlist. So please go to that Year 7 playlist on my channel that says Year 7 Persuasive Writing. And in that playlist, there is a video about David Attenborough speaking about the impact of climate change again. Can you go find that video, watch that video, and think about how it taps our emotions. There are various celebrities that speak in that video about the topic of climate change, okay? And I'd like you to try and find that video now and think about how you could now end your rebuttal with a point that is drawing on pathos, creating an emotional reaction. The video is there as inspiration to think about how you can tap emotion, okay? Okay, so what I'm showing you here is my channel's playlist, okay, up above, and it's Year 7 Persuasive Writing, and the video you want to find is these two here, David Attenborough on climate change and David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg, okay? You need to watch those videos and think about how they build up like an emotional effect, then use that to write a final sentence for your rebuttal that we've been working on today, which draws on emotion. So you might want to end it, for example, by saying, I find it deeply concerning that people like Tony Abbott are arguing that climate change is not a real present danger for our world. If we care about society, if we care about our animals, if we care about ourselves, we must take urgent action. So you're really trying to kind of hammer the emotional side of it, all right? So watch these videos, meet me back on my lesson. Okay, and now you're going to complete this task. So using pathos and emotion, add to your rebuttal. You can use the clip to gain ideas. All right, complete that task now. Okay, so for the final part of the lesson, we are going to draw together everything that you now have learned about how you can form a really good counter argument or rebuttal, okay, on climate change denial. And we are going to use the sentence structures again that I taught you earlier. And I've given you some phrases that you can also use to help develop your argument. And I want you to now finish by writing a new paragraph which takes on the climate deniers and argues why they are wrong. Again, it doesn't matter if that doesn't represent your personal viewpoint. You're just learning the skills of how you form these arguments. If it does represent your viewpoint, then channel that. Really show your passion about it and the importance and anger you feel about it in your writing. That's the gift of English. It can be a wonderful experience to kind of get off your chest exactly how you're feeling and use that to make the world a better place. Okay, so you're using these sentence starting structures here. So it is true that some people will still deny that climate change is real, however, go on to argue why that is wrong. You can develop it with therefore as well. And you can use these points here. It would be irresponsible not to recognise the impact of climate change. More harm than good could come from denying climate change. Unless we stop burying our heads in the sand, climate change will continue to devastate. These are all examples for you. Your job now, use this. Write up another paragraph in which you take on the climate change deniers, okay? Have fun with it, build in some sarcasm, don't go too far with it. Yes, Tom, Sav, I'm talking to you, but try and write as much of that up as you can in a full paragraph, okay? Right, and that is it for today's lesson. I really wish I was there in class with you to hear your writing and share ideas with you. Please send me examples of your work. I'd love to read them. And again, the more that you can give me that I can then put into videos and share back with everyone else, that would be great. Okay, take care of yourselves, everyone. Thank you for your hard work.